Welcome to the Warrior Gamer Headquarters podcast. Lieutenant Colonel Ken Crigliano, your co-host. And I am joined by two other co-hosts for our first episode ever. Bilal, would you like to introduce yourself to the team?
Yeah, my name is Bilal. I am a second-year medical student. I'm interested in mental health. I've been a lifelong video gamer. Love the mission of this organization, and I'm here to enjoy the ride on this podcast. Hope you enjoy this as well.
Awesome. Great. Glad to have you. We all make an awesome team, by the way. And SC, would you like to do a quick intro for everyone?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Essie. I come from a military family, Marines and Navy. Deal with some social anxiety myself, so mental health is near and dear, and also an avid gamer. My background is insurance and seeing what your mental health can do in your work life. But along with that, I will be here as a production manager and whatever needs to happen in the background.
That's right. And we will have links to our intros. We have a separate video that introduces everyone, all the team to you all our viewers. And so you can find that link here, click on that and explore a little bit more what we're about. But I do want to address a little bit of something that you said there, SC, which is we are all here part of the community. Mm-hmm. Even though we're co-hosts, we are part of the community, just like the Hair Club for Men. Not only am I the president, but I'm a member, right? We are our own audience. And so we hope and strive to be relatable to anyone and everyone who tunes in. And the topics that we cover here will be greatly influenced by everyone who tunes in, by the comments that we receive. And we do hope eventually to be live, and we'll take questions and interact with the audience live. That'll be something new for all of us because we're not all professionals, right? Nobody here has done this for a living. Matter of fact, this is probably opposite to what most of us do have experience in and expertise. So just please hang with us as we discover ourselves as we go through this process. So I did have a little bit of a discussion point that I wanted to talk about today, which I do want to focus the podcast not only on topics in advance, but what has happened in our own personal lives recently, because that's typically what the discussion is around the dinner table for most folks. So I do want to have sort of a dinner table approach, unless it doesn't work, of course, in the long run. But so I was discussing with a few folks on the hats that we wear, and more in particular, the personalities that we wear. And I was able to convey this quite effectively through the use of water. Water comes in multiple states, right? It can be frozen, it can be gas, it can be a liquid. And then, of course, we have that, elusive fourth state, which is, the gelatinous stuff that's on the sun, right? So, I have a system that I coach people on how to get themselves from one state to the next, because the first state that I tell people is the state of anxiety or stress, right? Or the state of anger. And the second state is a state of focus, right? And then a state of love and a state of being, just being, right? Those are typically the four states that I tell people that they can intervene in and watch themselves enter into those states. So Bilal, in our pilot episode, you talked about you watching kids, how they change their personalities and their behavior from real life and in the gaming world. So would you be able to talk a little bit about kind of my observations on how we can step back and see ourselves maybe from a second or third person view of our behavior and our personalities as it changes a bit, and be able to kind of maybe take control of it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's a big question, though. Very big, because it's multi-layered. It depends entirely on the individual, and also depends on their circumstances. So what I've noticed, and what he's referring to, if you haven't watched the pilot episode, is we talked briefly about this intersection of how you act one way on the internet versus how you act another way in person. Obviously, in person, you're kept in check for everything you say, how you look, how you feel, how you act. Every little thing is scrutinized. But when you're on the internet, that goes away. If I'm playing Overwatch, for example, one of my favorite characters is Baptiste. So if I play Baptiste, I'm Baptiste. Some 10-year-old is Baptiste, some 50-year-old. Everybody's playing Baptiste. The only differences are battle tag. Overwatch 2, by the way, not as great as Overwatch 1, unfortunately. Had to drop that in. Blizzard, what are you doing? But yeah, everybody is pretty much the same. And so nobody knows who you are, and thus you can be whoever, right? What I noticed in the young age, not so much in the older generation, but in the younger generation specifically, which is more of my expertise since I've seen this in my work life, what kids will do is that they will take this internet personality and make it something of their own. Obviously, there are still distinctions between what they say and do on the internet versus what they do in person, but those lines seem to be blending a little bit. Some of the language that kids would otherwise not be using in the school environment is starting to show, and they learn that from their video games because they're so ingrained in it and it becomes a part of their personality that they end up taking it outside. With the older generation, not so much, because as kids, they usually went outside a lot more and had interpersonal interactions. And so a lot of the fundamentals that they've built and how they perceive the world and how they act have been based upon those interactions, and gaming really just takes a side seat. Today, you're not seeing that anymore. You're seeing a blend, and it's not just video games, it's also because of social media. If anyone else wants to add anything else to that, that's just kind of the brief spiel of what we talked about before. It was a pretty interesting conversation.
Yeah, so my lead in to where I want to go with this is one of the most difficult things I ever had in the military was wearing different hats. And it's so specific to the military because, like, when I was enlisted, it was way different than when I became an officer. As an officer, oh my gosh, the number of hats that I have to wear. Like, I have to be a confidant, then I have to be a commander, and then I have to go home, I have to be a dad, then I have to be a son, and it was, I remember specifically when I became an officer, because we're very political as officers. We're very impersonal and personal at the same time, and so I struggled for years trying to wear these different hats because I had this identity that I want to stick with. Do you think, like, when we enter into the gaming world and we start gaming and we're able to transcend fluidly through these different personalities, these different characters, do you think that helps these folks be able to wear different hats in life and be able to act differently in different social circumstances and stuff? Like, what do you think?
Now that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't know if gaming necessarily helps with that. I think what helps actually it can, come to think of it, because when I'm thinking of that question, I think that the number one thing that people have to really be able to switch hats very easily is perspective taking, and that usually happens when you've experienced trials and tribulations. Gaming is one way to experience that. So by that logic, by that logical extension, I believe so. But I don't think gaming is enough of a trial to be able to learn how to put on these different hats.
All right, SC?
I would agree with Bilal there, at least, that frankly, the gaming does give you an opportunity to try things you would not have the opportunity to try otherwise. And it sounds maybe odd, as a person with social anxiety, though, gaming is a great way to rehearse situations, know ways to answer or see a scenario, especially when you're doing, you look at games I can think of right off the bat as Mafia, a lovely old game that's all about perception and detection and you always got three options: good cop, bad cop, and suspicious, if you will. I can't remember what the options are anymore, but it was always based on looking at faces and seeing how they react to your response and determining what's the best way to act towards this. Well, kind of a silly example, but when for certain people, it's a great opportunity to go, okay, in this situation, if somebody's suspicious, and if I try and push that attitude or something like that, I might get this opportunity back. Along with that, I would say it gives people a chance to step out of their own boundaries and try something new, which I feel like in this generation, we don't get much chance to try something new. I mean, Halloween just passed, and I don't know about you guys, but I remember being out until the middle of the night, running around with a pillowcase and things like that. And now it's 3 to 7. You have certain parameters where and how. You've got trunk or treat instead, so you're not even walking around neighborhoods. Younger generations don't get that opportunity to take risks at a young age. But now in the gaming environment, there is that opportunity that, for us was just part of our childhood, was going out and getting dirty, scraping our knees. And then you'd have video games that allowed you to do it a little bit more, versus now I feel like a lot of that risk happens virtually as opposed to in reality. And I think at least the experience I've had with some younger kids and other people that are gamers, just that opportunity to try something out before it's important to try it out. Try communicating or standing up or like.
Yeah, this is great. So I have 2 points, but the first one, trying things out. Why is it important? So if I'm a parent or if I'm a kid and like I'm not doing well at these games or whatever, what are you trying to draw on, like the benefit to them or society when you say they can go in there, try new things, fail and experiment and all that? Like, why would I care?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I had also mentioned in our pilot podcast as well, is just when you get the opportunity to fail, you get to learn how to pick yourself back up and try again and improve. Allows people to more easily better themselves and be able to become a stronger person, either emotionally, physically. However, the fact that you're not burdened down by a failure for a longer period of time, I think is a great thing that gaming and trying things with a safety net, if you will, helps for younger generations to have, which I believe leads people to, to trying new things and being either successful at things that they didn't know, or getting a more worldly perspective from that failure. But hopefully I answered your question there.
Yeah, you totally did. I mean, Bilal, we talked about this offset, right? Which is we think there's correlations, or at least some relationship between the entrepreneur mentality of America, the gaming aspect, because I will tell you, I mean, I played video games when I was younger. My dad owned a construction business. All of our houses were models. I mean, it was so clean. I had to hide in the garage for hours of the day because they were showing the houses, and I just played video games. And all my ability to do everything that you're talking about, I draw on a lot of that experience in the gaming world. And I will say though, like for mistakes that I make that are like permanent, I'm dysfunctional, I think a little bit because of the gaming, because like I could just hit reset, right? And I've seen this with like my friends and some kids where they're just like, no, let's just restart. And it's like, no, man, like you have a DUI, like you can't hit reset on that. Mm-hmm. So I think there's
the downside. That's a good point.
Yeah. And I think it's pertinent for us as we are becoming a voice of the gaming community, that we make sure that we let them know that's a thing. You can't hit reset, you can't restart on life many times. So that's a thing to keep in mind, because I keep that in mind a lot.
Yeah, it's all about developing a process-oriented mindset, because I was we were kind of talking earlier before we started this podcast about fun runs, how people are playing Valorant. That's the game we were talking about. People are playing virtually every day. You would think that by playing every day, you'd get that 10,000 hour rule. Like, you'd be really good, huh? And they don't improve. They don't improve. What is going on? Obviously, it's because other people are getting better, but there's something more to it. Because they're just playing for the sake of playing. They're not playing to learn, right? Because now a lot of games are multiplayer games. You can play them to get your 10-second clip. Oh my gosh, share your friends. Look how good I am. I know a friend of mine does that all the time. But that doesn't exactly amount to a consistent work ethic. It really doesn't. And you don't typically see that until you get to the higher levels. And even at the higher levels, there are those few exceptions of really gifted people. For example, in Overwatch 1, there was Sinatra. There's this player named Sinatra, very, very gifted. I mean, he was playing at a high level at the age of, 15, 16, 17, right? And he had an attitude. He definitely had an attitude. And obviously, that kind of comes with it. It's like, I'm better than you. I'm gifted. I got here, virtually effortlessly. But you could see over time the humility, it started to grow. He had to learn that from his peers. He had to learn that from taking defeats from even better teams. Even in Apex Legends, there was Dizzy, same situation. He was in high school. He was really good. He had a lot of cockiness. And then over time, the humility came up. And where did that humility come from? It came from, again, trials and tribulations. You've got to be put in a situation where you're tested and you can't back out from it. Because when you can't back out from it, you know that your back's against the wall. You have to fight. You have to try. So that's the situation that you kind of need to put yourself in, because the game's not going to tell you that. The game just says, okay, you're in a game, have fun. It's not going to tell you to better yourself. You need to tell yourself to better yourself. So that's another thing that we really want to stress in this community, is that when you play these games, adjust your mindset a little bit, because the game's not going to do that for you. Your friends are not going to do that for you. You're going to have to do that for yourself.
Yeah, I love that. I want to pull that string a little bit. I'm going to make a note real quick so I can come back to it.
More than just get good. I like that idea.
It's more than just get good. Absolutely.
More than just get good.
I'll be real. Saying get good is pretty funny. Gets last.
Oh,
but
it's hysterical. Yes.
Yeah. I love it. My friends do that to me all the time. Yesterday we were playing League. I was telling my friend, hey, when you're against Tristana, you gotta really walk back, because when she jumps on you, that's it. You're done. And literally a few minutes later, same thing happened to me. I walked a little too far forward. To be fair, she flashed. She had everything up, and I didn't have anything up, so that was my fault. But then my friend said, hey, Blah, what are you doing? Why don't you just walk back? I'm like, why did I just walk back? So, it's pretty funny, but at the same time, it's the mindset, right? I understand that's my mistake and I'll be able to improve from it. But other people, if they're just playing and they say, oh, wow, that was cheat, that was whatever, you're going to just write it off as, oh, well, they just got lucky. You're not going to improve.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Okay, this is great. I'm going to pull this thread. So so many conversations, I know at the officer level, even the enlisted level, on Reddit, everything in the military communities on there. I was talking about our leadership right now in the military. How, and I'm active duty, right? And so there's a lot of risk in talking about this, but there is overwhelming consensus that senior leaders in the military are unbelievably risk averse, and they're not leading, right? They're just doing whatever it takes to get the next star, go from colonel to star, and that's it. That's it. I have seen that over and over again. Now, what I've noticed is, you can see my background. I have won over 300 races. And at a certain point in time, I could show up at a race and I didn't recognize anyone. Everyone was racing for second, right? And there was a confidence that exuded in that, and a bit of cockiness, right? And I went into Valorant, right? And, got my ass kicked. I didn't even get a kill. And a dude, I'm dead on the ground, and a dude is standing over me shooting me. And I'm like, who's this jackass? I'm dead, bro. Come on. What? And it was that was a message, dude, that was terrible. He's shooting me back. But I have noticed a spillover, which is, I'm at work, and if there is a domain, a discipline, I'm talking to someone who has domain knowledge in a discipline, I have noticed I'm very more respectful and understanding than I ever have, because I'm yeah, I just got owned by probably like a 12-year-old, who's, so that is a great point, Bilal, that you just brought up.
Yeah, it's going to be a recurring point. I will say this right now. If you're watching this, you're going to hear this over and over again. The process is really important. If for any, if there's a chance that any of you happen to be watching the Broken by Concept podcast for League of Legends, they talk about this all the time. Go ahead and give them a listen. They're a big inspiration for this podcast, actually.
Yeah, and you know what else too is I used to play Age of Empires when I was a little kid, and I downloaded like the latest one, and like I get on multiplayer. Dude, like I'd start a farm and like people would be coming in with horses and shit. I was like, how did you guys make all this stuff? I'm getting crushed. And literally, like I was like, dude, I gotta like study. Like I went online, I downloaded a spreadsheet, I moved the spreadsheets, I compared people. I'm like, okay, if this archer comes to my town, I know that I can get him with this kind of horse. And like it was like next level stuff, man. And it goes exactly to your point of like, this is actually teaching me way better ways to succeed in life. And I'm taking that with like, I gotta do a mortgage. Okay, how do I take a mortgage, gamify this thing so I don't get screwed, right? Or my taxes or whatever. Okay, I need to get a spreadsheet and all this stuff. So is that kind of what you're teasing out there, Bilal?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You got that right.
All right, SC, what do you think?
I mean, absolutely. I agree with it. I have nothing to add, unfortunately. I mean, it's, I think Bilal and I are saying the same things. I'm just definitely focusing more on the game side. And Dr. Bilal here has, the experience to at least prove that it's something that you can take past that.
3 years. So I still need 3 years. Speaking of, actually, it was I was talking about this with some folks. So we just had final exams. And sometimes when in med school, how it works, or at least how it works in our school, you go under a 70%, you have to retake the exam, right? And so usually people pass on the retake, but these exams are pretty difficult. I mean, it's a hard fought 70. And what I was telling people is there's a lot of, low yield information. They're just throwing on slides. One slide, like the notes section of slide 95 is going to be on the test. It does happen. It really does. It's super frustrating. But what I found, objectively reviewing all the exams I've ever took, I've noticed that no matter how many times they throw those low yield questions, the majority of them are pretty big picture, right? And I told myself while I was studying that there's no reason for me to be missing these big picture questions. Absolutely not. Like I need to be understanding these concepts. If I'm not understanding these concepts, clearly I didn't study enough. If I missed the low yield stuff, I mean, who cares? Memorization is not my strong suit, but I need to get the high yield stuff because that's the main concept. That's the meat of it. That's what's going to carry me throughout my profession in the future, right? And so I try to frame my studying around fundamentals, and I do the same thing in my gaming. I actually learned that from my gaming. We were talking earlier about playing League of Legends at 1 to 3 o'clock. Like that was my schedule during my first year. That's what I would do because I would get quality games, and it was through that I learned, wait a second, why don't I just take these fundamentals, just think like fundamentals, and use that in my studying? And it works great. Fundamentals win games.
Yeah, I'm so curious as an athlete at a higher level, like it's been a heck of a time finding all the secrets that the best athletes do. But I got them, I know them, but it's like, how the hell did this dude like fight 6 people at the same time? Like I'm just totally lost on how some of these folks are able to pull it off. I mean, it's just next level. And it's like, I am not anywhere near I thought I was in my competency level. I'm like, on life, I'm like reevaluating my life when I'm playing these things, So that's pretty cool. So yeah. I want to go back a few minutes to SC your comments on experimenting and failing and everything. And so there's this thing in humans that this is fairly recent, by the way, mirror neurons. So Mr. Dr. Potential, can you explain mirror neurons for us?
Mirror neurons. Okay, let me see if my understanding isn't terrible. Essentially, it's like you learning from other people, right? So like they do something, you can learn it as well. They have a certain emotion, you can mimic that emotion as well. It's basically kind of like this like push-pull relationship of learning, right? And if you apparently, I don't know if this is like completely true, but people who lack mirror neurons are also less capable of being able to express empathy because they can't read emotions as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. So yeah, that's great. And there's so many ways we can crack this nut, but yeah, Botox patients, the Botox kills the ability for any movement, especially in the face, right? And there's mirror neurons that get affected, right? They're not going to get any blood flow. So because they can't make the facial expression, EEGs have reported that they cannot feel the emotion of happiness because they are unable to smile. And when they see someone smile, mirror neurons are literally neurons that are in your skin and in your brain, that when you see another human or animal or anything do something, the brain fires those neurological pathways, and then the mirror neurons in skin go, okay, we're not really doing that. It's a very fascinating process, but it's the essential and actually the only learning process that humans get when they're first born is through mirror neurons. And so like that stuff fires,
Mm-hmm.
Man, I get off on a tangent on that, but my whole thing is like when you're in a game, right? You're gaming and you're learning to experiment and you're messing around and you're doing this stuff that you might be out of your comfort zone or whatever, depending on the game. I believe that there are mirror neuron benefits, that those neurological pathways are actually being reinforced subconsciously and unconsciously through the use of gaming. And I think I have not seen information on that, but that is a hypothesis that I have, that you're getting benefit from gaming because of the mirror neuron phenomenon from humans. Does that make any sense?
It does. Honestly, it's an interesting concept that I hope somebody explores at some point, to the point of having a thesis written about it. But that is just because I think that I would agree with you on that. And just thinking about, the communities that I've gamed in, or even just while you're playing the games and what you're hearing other people say, I do feel like, there's an opportunity to learn how to react, or what emotions to feel when, how, during that. And honestly, talking about mirror neurons, if I may a little, makes me think of another term that's very that's used in the ADHD autistic community, which is mirroring, and that is this, not the same thing, but it's being able to, it's reading the people around you, or the environment around you, and being able to, and not being able to, but adjusting your emotions, your face, the way you're interacting to mirror the people around you. And oftentimes it can lead to a stronger feeling of empathy for people in those communities, just because their connections are so strong in the way that they're reflecting people's emotions and feelings. They can feel them stronger, feel the same grief or joy or anger. And I'll be honest, sometimes in video games, I think especially the way that they've conveyed it, you're these characters, you're these individuals going through these battles or competing with these enemies. And I feel that it does give you this sense of empathy with, even if you don't fully see what your characters are feeling, it's the environment around it that essentially you're mirroring back. Hopefully I didn't take it too far on a tangent.
No, this is great.
Tangent.
People can fast forward if parts of it suck, so it's okay. But I think, I'm in the idea that certain books, certain podcasts, parts of it will be very relevant. And then as you grow and mature and change and evolve, you go back, you rewatch, and then you're like, yes, okay, I'm now ready for this part, right? I mean, I reread all my books multiple times, and it's like, oh my God, it's like the first time I read this thing. And I think it's just because, we're not ready for it, or, there's just a process that goes. So I'm totally okay. I think it's great. So before we wrap it up, I actually can't wait until we have like live people to interact with. I think like when we start talking on this kind of stuff, to have actually people, I want to have like a person in the bottom corner here who's like playing a game and they're like, no, what are you talking about? Blah, I don't know about that. Oh, hold on, wait, go back. Like I can't wait to like be live interactive with folks, because I think it's just going to be so much more fun. So we're super excited about having that. So do you think that there's benefit? I guess the last topic we'll talk about, how do you balance? So the most popular games are first-person shooters right now. I think that fact is solid, right? Does anyone disagree with me?
That's pretty consistent. Like we can Google this, just double check.
Yeah, I went on Steam and I just ran like the top 100 games.
Always
and it was
FPS.
like,
It's
Yeah.
going to be
it's like, holy cow.
Either that or it's the knockoff versions of Candy Crush for the middle-aged.
Oh yeah, that's right. A lot of the Candy Crush.
really don't think that that's who we're talking to right now. Let's stick with first.
We're counting that.
So do you think that there ought to be, or maybe discussion about balance, where apples are great for you, but I tell you what, you eat 6 of them, you're going to get sick, right? And so do you think that folks might want to pay attention to balance in the sort of gaming that they're doing, not just in the volume velocity, but the actual what type that they're doing? Does that make sense?
So not just the amount they play, but the types of games they're playing.
Yeah, I think if you play Candy Crush or like Words with Friends enough, I think there'll be some detrimental effects, right? You got to get out, you got to look at people, and we'll talk later too about how your brain is designed for 4-dimensional, face-to-face contact. But like, do you think that people ought to be like, okay, for me, if I run too far, I get injured, right? My body tells me, but I'm not sure about how to identify a function of too much of one thing in gaming.
That's very, very game dependent, genre dependent, as well as game dependent. You could really, there are videos where people talk about one game and how this one game has this one detrimental effect, and you could kind of go on about really anything. For example, if you play 4 hours of Animal Crossing, that's just you probably on a Saturday weekend, whatever, right? That's usually what it is. People usually aren't playing late night Animal Crossing, just trying to get whatever it is that they're trying to do. But FPS games, MOBAs, yeah, you'll see people happily skip their homework assignments and stay up till 2-3 a.m. to play. You don't see that with Animal Crossing. You don't see that with Mario Kart. So certain games do have a stronger effect on the mind, in which like these games, especially these multiplayer games, what they do is they constantly take you away from reward. And so that denial of reward is what keeps you going. Whereas like other games, for example, let's look at any Super Mario game. Like you're not always being denied a reward necessarily. You're making pretty steady progress throughout the game. You're not having somebody else, another human being, like take that away from you forcefully. The game is doing that. And so, yeah, there's a denial reward, but the denial reward from an FPS game is a lot stronger. Take Fortnite, for example. A lot of kids play Fortnite. They'll drop in and right away they'll die. And they're like, what? I want to go again. And then they repeat the process. About an hour and a half later, they finally get their good game. And it doesn't really feel like a victory. It feels more like a sigh of relief. They really want the sense of victory, so they keep going, and then they go for another 1.5 hours. You see where I'm going with this? Some games have that effect. And so, yeah, we could totally start an entire separate discussion on different video game genres and what effects they have on the mind. That is something I'm interested in and I want to learn more about.
This is very interesting. I've not heard that denial of reward.
Yeah. Oh, SC, you really
I was just going to say, because part of it is essentially it's little bits of dopamine, which is the reward hormone and something like that. So you continue to get these little tiny drops that make you think that it's okay. I've just made it here. One more set. It's like a fetch quest in RPGs. okay, I need you to go get the milk. Well, we've lost a cow, so now you have to go find the cow in the woods. Well, now it's been taken by this or that. And so eventually you get to the end, you're sitting there going, I've spent 3 hours and I still haven't gotten the darn milk. But each time they found something that kept that curiosity, that immediacy, all those things that give you dopamine, which continues that drive to move forward until eventually, like Bilal is saying, it's 3-4 hours, you finally got that one win, and at that point you're so essentially overdosed on dopamine that it's like, all right, I did it, done. And I mean, it is something that is real. And along with that is, I was going to also mention, is something called the Tetris effect, which I don't know, have either of you heard of that?
No, first time.
I used to play Tetris, so
it's a great game, but it is something that happens where when you play so much Tetris, you leave and you can still see the blocks. Or you start to see things as building blocks. You look at buildings on a wall and you look at the lights and you start to see how they might fit together. And so it's something that's been seen, that video games can affect your problem solving and what you're looking at and how you're looking at it. And I mean, Tetris is one example, but then you look at first person shooters, or I mean, Mario Kart's another example. You're driving on the road, it's really, really slow traffic. If you played it for 8 hours, maybe you go, I could just bump that car. I'll just throw a banana peel out and slip. Exactly. Get your little boost.
I wish I had that.
Blue shell. Get out of here.
Exactly.
The shell shooter.
Exactly. Maybe you'll throw a banana peel out and hope somebody slips. I mean, I hope that doesn't happen. But I am sure that there's somebody out there that after, that's played Mario Kart all day, and at some point I've gone, it's just a bumper. If I bump it, it won't be a problem. It's like, yes, it will. Don't forget.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that with gaming and stuff like that, there is balance. Like you said, too many apples are good, but they'll make you sick. And the same thing with gaming. Too much of games, any sort, just does kind of nullify you to consequences and to, I mean, reality, but consequences and danger, and even just the good things that are healthy for you, the serotonin, the dopamine, all those different things that games are programmed to give you. If you can only get them from games, after a while, you're going to live a very hard and challenged life. And it's all about balance. It's about training your mind to be able to problem solve and learn and enjoy, but also to still be able to live in the reality.
Exactly. Yeah, that denial of reward thing that I mentioned, even I chose those words specifically because what I'm hinting at is that's kind of the terminology used when we're talking about addiction. So that is a thing, and people do get addicted. And SC, what you were mentioning about that constant like little bit of dopamine, that's what keeps people going. There are cases, I mean, these are fringe cases, of course, where people go on these 48, 50-hour gaming binges and then actually die because they don't take care of themselves. That's a thing. That is a thing.
Wow, really?
It's rare. It's extremely rare. But what's not extremely rare is the fact that people just keep getting wrapped into this game, keep wanting a reward, not being satisfied when they do get the reward. That's the key factor. You can have the reward, but if you're not satisfied with it, if you're not happy with it, what's the point? People talk about League of Legends, for example. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people uninstall and reinstall the game, because they're simply frustrated while playing it, but then they end up coming back. And then when they come back, it's great for the first few times, but then it ends up getting sour later. Common trend you notice is, they took a break. They felt better. Great. Wow. They played a lot of games. It went worse. Shocker. Right? That balance is really important, and people need to recognize that. I know it's a little hard to recognize, especially like when you're playing the game and you feel like it's not a problem until like it's too late. And then it's especially difficult for kids, I feel, because they're always having their parents watch over them. And if you are a parent, or parents who like to kind of control what their kids do on the internet, really it can cause a bit of friction, right? Because the kid's saying, oh, there's no problem, but the parents saying, oh, there is a problem. What is the balance? The parents don't know because they don't play games, and the kids obviously don't know because they're kids. It's a whole problem in itself. And yeah, it does go down a dark road, which eventually results in some clinical implications. Yeah, so it's very much a thing. You can even see this in the Broken by Concept podcast. I've mentioned this a few times already, but They also coach, both Curtis and Nathan, the hosts of the podcast, and they will literally talk about how the clients' lives will improve because of the coaching. Why? Because they reshaped their relationship with the game, developed the mindset, and now their life is thriving. They're doing great. You see, the problem started with the game, oddly enough. But the games can also have a lot of benefits. That mindset, they also learned that from the games too. So huge topic. Yeah, I mean, you can go on about this forever.
Well, this is good because I want to leave us right here. So the audience wants more. And so we'll publish this. Hopefully we'll get some feedback and maybe we'll address some questions. That'd be kind of cool too. If we get some questions, we can address them on the next iteration. So on behalf of everybody, and I'll let everyone do their goodbyes, but I really appreciate if you tuned in and you lasted this long, please leave a comment or something that you actually lasted this long. And if you played video games while you did this, or you gamed while you're listening to us, that's cool too. Let us know. We definitely are interested in that. And I'm Ken Crigliano. Again, I appreciate you being here and listening to me blow V8. And I'll let my two teammates here also say their goodbyes.
All right. Well, I'm Essie. If you're listening to this, you're awesome and you got this. That's my sign off.
Bilal Rana, hope you had fun. Remember to take it easy. If you think you need a break, you probably do. Just take it. It's okay. You come back the next day, I promise you'll enjoy your game more. You will enjoy the game more. Take it easy, please.